Huang Na, a cute 8-year-old girl, mysteriously disappeared in the island nation of Singapore. After the incident, thousands of people actively participated in a large-scale search operation. Some even offered a $10,000 reward for anyone who could find a clue about her mysterious disappearance. Huang Na's mother even climbed a mountain to search for her, after her niece told her about a dream in which Huang Na was being held on a mountain. However, after a thorough investigation of the case, many people began to support the culprit and strangely criticize Huang Na's mother. What happened to the little girl, and what is the secret behind the criticism of Huang Na's mother? Singapore, long known as one of the four Asian tigers, is not only renowned for its rapid development, but also for its cleanliness, civility, and world-class safety. However, no matter how safe a place may be, cruel fate can sometimes still find its way to innocent people. This is the heartbreaking story of Huang Na, a Chinese immigrant girl who tragically lost her life at the tender age of 8. Huang Na was born on September 26, 1996, into a laboring family in Fujian. In reality, her family consisted of just her mother, as her father had abandoned them before her birth to work illegally in Singapore in the fruit packaging industry. While abroad, he became involved in an illicit relationship with another woman and eventually divorced his wife. A few years later, Huang Na's mother found new happiness, and Huang Na gained a younger sibling from her mother's new marriage. When Huang Na entered the early years of primary school, Singapore began implementing immigration support policies to attract talented individuals. Seeing a good educational opportunity for her daughter, Madam Huang Shuying decided to bring Huang Na to Singapore for schooling, even though this required a significant investment of money and effort from the family. Huang Na followed her mother to a foreign land, nearly 5,000 kilometers away from their hometown of Fujian, to attend Jintai Primary School, one of the most expensive schools in Singapore at the time. Naturally, no mother would feel at ease letting her child live alone in a foreign country, so Madam Huang Shuying decided to stay with her daughter, only occasionally returning to Fujian to care for her younger child with her second husband. In their new country, she made a living by opening a vegetable stall at the market near Huang Na's school and rented a room above the stall where the two of them could rest after long, tiring days. The presence of the mother and daughter quickly became familiar to everyone in the market. The image of 7-year-old Huang Na, with her sweet smile, playful nature, and lively demeanor, captured the hearts of those around her. Despite knowing that her family's situation was not as well off as her peers, Huang Na was always understanding and well-behaved, never asking her mother for anything. She became a source of emotional support for her mother, providing her with the motivation to keep working. In their free time, the two of them would often play together, and Huang Na would often say to her mother, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll study really hard. Someday, I'll become a doctor, make a lot of money to take care of you, so you won't have to work so hard anymore." But that dream, along with so many other hopes, was left unfinished as she never got the chance to fulfill them. On September 27, 2004, after organizing a warm and joyful birthday party for Huang Na, Madam Huang Shuying began packing for a 2-week trip back home. This trip was not only to visit Fujian but also to care for her younger child with her second husband. During her mother's absence, Huang Na stayed in Singapore to continue her studies. For the 8-year-old girl, her mother frequently flying back and forth between Singapore and Fujian had become routine. Huang Na's independence amazed and impressed everyone. She handled everything on her own, from eating, bathing at the public bathhouse, to even flying home alone during the summer holidays. Her exceptional maturity earned admiration from those who knew her. Therefore, this trip back home was nothing special for the mother and daughter. Before leaving, Madam Huang Shuying entrusted her daughter to a roommate named Li Shujin and gave Huang Na 100 Singapore dollars to take care of herself during the short 2-week period. On October 10th, nearly 2 weeks after her mother left, Huang Na gently told Li Shujin that she wanted to call her mother. It was a familiar habit whenever she missed her, so Li Shujin was at ease letting her go on her own. Around 1:30 p.m., after informing her aunt, Huang Na swiftly headed to the nearby phone booth. With the receiver in hand, she skillfully dialed the number. When her mother's voice echoed from the other end, Huang Na excitedly talked about the past few days, about the little things that had happened while her mother wasn't around. She hesitantly told her mother that she needed an electronic English dictionary and wanted a new pair of sandals because her current pair was worn out. Her mother smiled over the phone, promising to buy everything when she returned to Singapore, but reminded her daughter to wait a few more days as work at home was still unfinished. The conversation lasted over 6 minutes, but it didn't seem to be enough to ease the longing in the young girl's heart. If Madame Huang Xiying had known it would be the last time she'd hear her daughter's voice, perhaps she would have talked a little longer. By 2:30 p.m., after more than an hour had passed without Huang Na returning, Li Shujin began to feel uneasy. An unsettling premonition flickered through her mind. She rushed to the phone booth where Huang Na usually called, but the girl was nowhere to be seen. A creeping sense of fear began to take over, and she frantically searched everywhere, from the market where Huang Na's mother sold produce to the school the girl attended, but there was no sign, no clue. Unable to delay any longer, Li Shujin sought the help of those around her. More than 20 people split up to search the surrounding areas, but all efforts were in vain. Huang Na had seemingly vanished into thin air, leaving behind a void and an overwhelming sense of worry. By over 10 p.m., after many hours of tireless searching, Miss Li and the others finally had to turn to the police for help. At the same time, the bad news was reported back to Fujian, to Huang Na's mother. Immediately, Madame Huang Xuying dropped all her unfinished work and rushed to catch the earliest flight back to Singapore to search for her beloved daughter. The police, after receiving the case information, wasted no time. They began the investigation, gathering statements from everyone involved. According to the records, the last time Huang Na was seen was when she left home to call her mother, wearing a jacket, blue shorts, and sporting short, dark hair. Furthermore, after confirming that Huang Na was just an 8-year-old girl with a sweet, cheerful personality, and that her mother had never had any conflicts with anyone since coming to Singapore, the police ruled out the possibility that the girl disappeared as an act of revenge. Moreover, Singapore is a small country with an area of only about 700 kilometers squared. Huang Na was very familiar with the area around where she lived, so the likelihood of her getting lost was almost impossible. After eliminating all other unlikely scenarios, only one possibility remained, and it was the one no one wanted to consider. Huang Na had been kidnapped. With the investigation quickly pointing in this direction, the police focused on the wholesale market where Huang Na's mother worked, conducting checks and interviewing everyone who was there that day. Very quickly, they found the first clue. Ms. Lam, an employee at a cafe near the market, stated that on that afternoon she had seen Huang Na wearing her jacket and blue shorts but without shoes, walking alone past her store. Ms. Lam even asked why the girl wasn't wearing shoes, but Huang Na only smiled softly and skipped away without answering. Ms. Lam wasn't the only one. Several others at the market also reported seeing Huang Na that afternoon walking with a man who seemed very familiar. They described him as a man in his 20s, not very intelligent, so he only did simple packing work. This man often played with Huang Na and was close to her like an uncle to a niece. Following the clues from the vendors, the police quickly tracked down the young man. His name was Tuk Leng Hao, a Malaysian native who worked in packing and was usually called Leng Hao. When the police invited him for questioning regarding Huang Na's disappearance on October 10th, Leng Hao appeared genuinely surprised. He admitted to meeting the girl that day and even gave her 2 mangoes, advising her not to wander around and to return home quickly. With his cooperative and honest demeanor, showing no signs of deceit, the police's suspicions about him gradually diminished, and he was allowed to go home. While the police were actively investigating, Huang Na's mother was relentless in her search. Since she had flown to Singapore on October 12th, she had printed countless flyers with her daughter's image, handing them out to passersby, constantly asking if anyone had seen her daughter. Madame Huang Xuying also searched for her daughter everywhere, at construction sites, water pipelines, refusing to rest even for a minute. Day after day, from early morning until late at night, people would always see her tirelessly walking, carrying the fragile hope of finding her daughter, wishing only for her return, no matter how ill she might be. During those exhausting days of searching, a niece called her, sharing that she had had a strange dream. Huang Na was trapped on a mountain. Although this was a spiritual matter and likely had no practical significance, in her desperation, Madame Huang Xuying decided not to ignore it. For many days, despite her deteriorating health, she carried a picture and her daughter's favorite teddy bear, climbing high mountains to search. In this journey, she was not alone. Alongside her were not only reporters, but also strangers touched by the mother and daughter's story. They were willing to search all over Singapore to help. At that time, the entire nation of Singapore seemed to unite in the search for Huang Na. From business people, retirees, taxi drivers, and many others, everyone participated. Someone even offered a reward of up to 10,000 Singapore dollars for anyone who found a clue. They divided up tasks to spread the news, images, and flyers about the girl's mysterious disappearance. The search was so massive that even neighboring Malaysia caught wind of the story. Some Malaysians also joined the search, and a few restaurants in the border area even posted flyers calling for help in finding Huang Na. Within just a few days, the number of people involved in the search became uncountable. More than 70,000 flyers were printed and distributed, yet despite everyone's efforts, the result was still in vain. At this moment, the story suddenly took a completely different turn when the police decided to investigate the clues and those involved more thoroughly, including Leng Hao. When Leng Hao was summoned to the police station for the second time, his statement suddenly changed 180 degrees, raising serious suspicion among the investigators. In his new testimony, Leng Hao claimed that he knew where Huang Na was and that she had been threatened and kidnapped by a group of 3 to 4 Chinese men. He explained that Huang Na's mother had unresolved conflicts with some individuals at the market, leading to her daughter's abduction as an act of revenge. Not stopping there, Leng Hao even volunteered to help the police by using his connections to contact the bad group and request them to release Huang Na. However, he said that he had been summoned too early and hadn't had time to bring his phone, so he needed to go back home to retrieve it. Despite some doubts, the police agreed and assigned 2 officers to escort Leng Hao back to his house. After retrieving the phone, they quickly took him back to the police car to return to the station and conduct a lie detector test. But unexpectedly, something beyond control occurred. While passing through Pasir Panjang Street, Leng Hao claimed he was hungry and asked to stop at a restaurant. Taking advantage of the police's trust, he pretended to go to the restaurant and then secretly escaped. After waiting for a while and not seeing Leng Hao return, the police suddenly realized they had been tricked. This seemingly old but still very effective ruse allowed Leng Hao to mysteriously vanish. Of course, when a suspect escapes during transport, the police must immediately pursue and call for backup to cordon off the area as quickly as possible. However, despite deploying additional forces and conducting an intense search, they were still unable to catch up with Leng Hao. It was as if he vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. Where did he go? To find the answer, let's turn back time and explore the true nature of Leng Hao. Born on December 16, 1981, in Penang, Malaysia, Leng Hao was the second of 4 children in a poor family. At the age of 18, he decided to leave his hometown for Singapore, hoping to find opportunities to change his life. But the harsh reality was more difficult than he expected. Without qualifications, Leng Hao could only take on manual labor jobs. After some time in Singapore, Leng Hao met a Chinese-Indonesian woman. They quickly got married and had a son together. Fate intervened when Huang Na and her mother moved to Singapore and rented a small room in the same building where Leng Hao lived. From then on, he and Huang Na became close, treating each other like uncle and niece. Leng Hao often took her on his motorcycle for outings, bought her favorite items, and enjoyed delicious food around Singapore. His genuine care earned not only Huang Na's trust but also that of her mother, who grew fond of him. When the police informed Huang Na's mother that Leng Hao was the prime suspect in her daughter's disappearance, she couldn't believe it. She repeatedly denied it and kept asking the police if there had been a mistake, unable to accept the truth. However, reality is often harsh. The Singapore police's suspicion became increasingly justified, especially after Leng Hao's sudden escape, which only raised further doubt. Returning to the moment of Leng Hao's escape, we need to consider Singapore's geography. As the smallest country in Southeast Asia, the only way to leave Singapore by land is to cross into Malaysia, Leng Hao's homeland. As soon as the police discovered that he had fled, Singapore authorities contacted their Malaysian counterparts for assistance in the search. According to information from Malaysia, they had contacted Leng Hao's family, including his parents and siblings. His father, who was 62 years old at the time, honestly told the police that he had received a brief phone call from his son after he fled. In the call, Leng Hao claimed that he had not kidnapped Huang Na and that he only ran away because he couldn't bear the pressure from the police. Leng Hao's older brother also couldn't believe that his younger sibling could be involved in such a serious case. According to him, Leng Hao was a kind person, had never borrowed money or gotten into any fights. The idea of him kidnapping a child seemed unimaginable. The Singapore police also contacted Leng Hao's wife, who still lived there. She revealed that Leng Hao had called her, insisting that he did not kidnap the girl. However, during the call, Leng Hao disclosed an important detail. After escaping from the police, he took a taxi to the border between the two countries and then continued by bus to Johor, Malaysia. Although the family hoped Leng Hao would clarify everything, and despite the investigative cooperation between the two countries, the situation remained at a standstill. It wasn't until October 30th, 10 days after his last interrogation and 20 days since the case began, that Leng Hao voluntarily surrendered to the police in Johor, Malaysia. Upon receiving the notification, Singapore police immediately sent an investigative team to Malaysia to bring Leng Hao back for further questioning. Knowing there was no way out, Leng Hao recounted the entire event from the moment the incident with Huang Na occurred. He admitted that he was an illegal immigrant working in Singapore with no passport. On the day he escaped, taking advantage of the moment with the police, Leng Hao had quickly stolen a pass card, which allowed him to easily return to Malaysia without any hindrance. On October 31st, a team of over 20 police officers escorted Leng Hao to the location where he claimed to have disposed of Huang Na's body. The site was on a hill in Telok Blangah Park, only about a 10-minute drive from the wholesale market where her mother worked. After searching for more than 30 minutes following Leng Hao's directions, the police noticed a foul odor coming from beside a withered bush. Upon digging through the shallow soil, they found a cardboard box sealed with white tape, with liquid oozing from the corners. There were no signs that the crime had occurred there, only that it was the place where the body was buried. The box was taken to the forensic center for examination. There, forensic experts confirmed that the box was the type used for packaging at Leng Hao's workplace. Inside the box were 9 layers of plastic, and after removing all of them, they discovered the heavily decomposed body of a young girl, no longer recognizable. To identify the body, the forensic team conducted a DNA comparison with Huang Na's mother, Madame Huang Shuying. The results confirmed that the body was indeed Huang Na, who had been missing for 3 weeks. While the forensic team worked, the police continued to interrogate Leng Hao. According to his statement, Huang Na's death was an accident. Leng Hao claimed that he was just playing hide-and-seek with her in the warehouse, but instead of playing the usual way, he tied her hands and feet before hiding. He explained that he wanted to make the game more interesting by letting her untie herself and then come find him. However, the body doesn't lie, and the forensic doctor spoke on behalf of the victim. According to Dr. Pa Chu's report, the direct cause of Huang Na's death was acute airway obstruction. The bruising on her face, especially around the nose and mouth, indicated that she had been subjected to force equivalent to the pressure of an adult male's hand. Determining the exact moment when the suffocation began and when it resulted in death was impossible due to how long the attack lasted and the fact that the body had been wrapped in 9 layers of plastic. Additionally, the victim's face had multiple injuries, particularly to the back of the head. Due to the body's prolonged exposure to damp ground, determining the cause of these injuries was challenging. When examining the digestive tract, Dr. Pa Chu found partially digested mango in the girl's stomach, along with vomit in her mouth and waste in her rectum. Coupled with Leng Hao's statement that the girl had seizures, 2 possibilities emerged. Either she suffered from an epileptic episode, or external force had been applied. What complicated the case further was that when Huang Na's body was found, she was not wearing any clothes. The genital area of the 8-year-old girl showed signs of assault, with evident scratches and bruising. Despite the mounting evidence, Leng Hao continued to deny the crime. In his statement, Leng Hao said that after tying up Huang Na and hiding, he heard a loud noise from her room. When he ran in, he saw her vomiting blood, having seizures, and suffering from an epileptic fit. Panicking and in a daze, he said he wanted to untie her but couldn't. Recalling a first aid method he had seen online, he attempted to apply pressure horizontally on her neck, even using his foot when his hands proved ineffective. But all his efforts were in vain. As for why she wasn't wearing clothes, Leng questions. Hao explained that after his failed attempts to save her, he removed her jacket to cover her face, terrified by her increasingly lifeless eyes. He couldn't clearly explain why he had removed her other garments, only saying that his actions became uncontrolled in his panic. Based on his testimony, the police went to the warehouse on the 15th floor of the wholesale market where Huang Na's mother worked. There, they found crucial evidence: Huang Na's hair and blood, cigarette butts containing Leng Hao's saliva, and tape bearing his fingerprints. Fibers from both their clothes were also found, confirming that this was indeed the original crime scene. On July 11, 2005, at the Singapore High Court, Leng Hao's case was officially brought to trial. The prosecution charged him with murder, based on the testimony of 76 witnesses, a series of physical evidence, and a reenactment video performed by Leng Hao himself. According to the forensic report, the incident was summarized as follows. At around 1:40 p.m. on October 10, 2004, Leng Hao lured Huang Na into a warehouse on the 15th floor of Block 13 in the wholesale market area, under the pretense of playing hide-and-seek. After eating mangoes, the girl was stripped of her clothes, her hands and feet were tied with rope, and she was assaulted. To silence her, Leng Hao covered her mouth and nose with his hands until she was lifeless. He then stomped and kicked her head to ensure she was dead. Her body was wrapped in 9 layers of plastic bags and placed in a cardboard box, which was sealed with tape. At around 5:30 p.m., Leng Hao borrowed a colleague's motorbike and returned to his apartment. By approximately 8 p.m., he transported the box containing Huang Na's body and hastily buried it on a hill in Teluk Blangah Park. He then returned and gave the motorbike back to his colleague at around 9 p.m. Faced with serious accusations, Leng Hao remained silent throughout the trial. However, his lawyer presented 2 key arguments to prove his innocence, or at least reduce his sentence. First, the lawyer argued that although the prosecution had substantial witness testimony and the defendant's statements, there was no direct evidence proving that Leng Hao was the cause of Huang Na's death. The forensic report showed that the victim had suffered airway obstruction, but it could not clearly determine whether the cause was due to her nose and mouth being covered or due to vomit blocking her airways as a complication of a seizure. Second, even the cause of the victim's seizure could not be conclusively determined as the result of external force or a spontaneous epileptic attack. Although the victim's family had no history of epilepsy, this case was still possible. To defend Leng Hao, the legal team invited a psychiatrist to testify about his mental state. According to this doctor, Leng Hao exhibited signs of schizophrenia, including showing no emotion over Huang Na's death and fabricating the story about 3 to 4 Chinese men kidnapping the victim. Moreover, Leng Hao had an IQ of only 76, which was below the average in Malaysia, Singapore, and the world at the time. However, bringing in the psychiatrist did not benefit Leng Hao. The prosecution quickly countered that Leng Hao's IQ was not low enough to be considered mentally impaired, as only an IQ below 70 would be taken into account. Furthermore, neither Leng Hao nor his family had any history of mental illness. The prosecution also pointed out that Leng Hao's attitude and actions remained unchanged before and after the crime, indicating that he was mentally stable. They emphasized how carefully he disposed of the evidence, from wrapping the victim's body in 9 layers of plastic bags and a cardboard box, to choosing a location without cameras to hide it. When interrogated by the police, Leng Hao confidently lied, showing that he was fully aware that his actions were wrong and that he needed to conceal them. Additionally, Leng Hao had enough understanding to use a police pass to escape from Singapore to Malaysia. Regarding his ability and motive to commit the crime, the police discovered that Leng Hao had once tied up a girl because he found her loud and annoying. The relationship between Leng Hao and Huang Na was also strained, and on one occasion, he had reacted harshly to her when angry. Therefore, it could not be ruled out that Leng Hao had acted against Huang Na because she did something that displeased him. After a series of intense and dramatic court hearings, on August 27, 2005, Leng Hao was finally convicted and faced the harshest punishment under the law. Refusing to accept his fate, in January 2006, he filed another appeal. The case was meticulously reviewed, but the outcome remained the same. The initial verdict was upheld. Leng Hao's family, in pain and despair, submitted a plea for clemency to the president of Singapore. However, after more than 8 months of waiting in vain, their hopes were dashed as everything remained unchanged. On November 3, 2006, the sentence was carried out, closing a dark chapter in his life. As for little Huang Na, her funeral was held in a somber atmosphere. Many people came to say their final goodbyes, bringing flowers, snacks, and her favorite Hello Kitty toys to accompany her to her final resting place. However, the story did not end there. A controversial side story began to emerge, focusing on Madame Huang Shuying and her second husband, Zheng Wenhai. After the case concluded, instead of fading, negative information about Madame Huang Shuying spread even further. Netizens began digging into her past. They discovered that after divorcing her first husband, she had once traveled to Singapore on a short-term visa and stayed on to work after it expired, which led to her arrest and imprisonment. After serving her sentence, she was deported. However, her desire for a better life pushed her to find a way back to Singapore. Rumor has it that a fellow inmate advised her to destroy her fingerprints by pressing all 10 fingers onto a red-hot iron bar to avoid detection. Afterward, she reportedly paid 8,000 Singapore dollars to a human trafficking gang to illegally re-enter the country. Meanwhile, little Huang Na had no bad record, so her entry into Singapore was legal. When this information surfaced, the police launched an investigation and confirmed its accuracy. Madame Huang Shuying was forced to take her daughter's remains back to her homeland. Her second husband, Zheng Wenhai, also became a focal point of attention. A photo of him holding the portrait of his wife's daughter, crying, was viewed by many as insincere. While tears were falling, it seemed like he was acting rather than expressing real grief. The rumors did not stop there. Word spread that after returning to Fujian, the family lived in unimaginable luxury. It was said that the donations from well-wishers during the search and funeral for Huang Na were used to build a 4-story villa with a large parking lot and many lavish amenities. These revelations caused a public outcry. Many people shifted their support to Leng Hao, believing they had been wrong to side with Madame Huang Shuying. Some even suspected that the entire tragedy might have been orchestrated by her and her husband. They criticized her for being a negligent mother, letting her 8-year-old daughter become overly independent while she comfortably flew back to China. In response to the rumors, Madame Huang Shuying spoke out in her defense. She asserted that most of the donated money was used to build a burial site for her daughter. The family's house was merely extended by 1 floor to provide a view of the place where her daughter rests. The remainder of the money, she said, was used to repair infrastructure in the village and donated to charitable organizations, with the hope of spreading goodwill to the community. In summary, this case is truly unique as all the evidence was circumstantial, with no direct evidence being revealed. Nonetheless, the unjust passing of the 8-year-old girl remains an enduring sorrow. The rumors surrounding her mother and stepfather, some true and some inaccurate, only add more complexity to the story. But perhaps the most important thing we can do is to pray for Huang Na to rest in peace. What are your thoughts on this case? Please share your opinions in the comments section below so we can discuss together. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to avoid missing out on the next gripping cases on the murder documentary Tony channel. Thank you, and see you in the next stories.